Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Hey guys, welcome to Coffee and the Bull with Mike and John. We've got our guest Steve here today. Some of you may recognize him from TikTok with his amazing drumming abilities and skills where he drums along, skill set that I don't have.
Just beating and banging.
Right. I mean,
That's what I do.
I drum with my fingers. I was going to go a whole nother road with that.
Yeah, you could.
Steve and I have been friends since about 2017.
Which, if I could say that, that's a feat for Steve, because being friends with you is kind of a difficult task.
Thanks.
So
Thanks. Well, he didn't create a podcast.
He's a patient person, so.
Right. So with that, Steve and I met at a Harley dealership, kind of bonded over our love for zombies. Well, it's my love for zombies. He just likes horror movie stuff. So Steve's here today. We're going to talk about addiction, recovery, and really something that I don't think anybody has ever anticipated seeing, and that's two cops and a recovering drug addict sitting in a room.
Addict, you know,
Right.
on a
Right.
podcast,
Two cops and a drug addict walking to a bar.
Sounds like a movie, right? Or a bad joke. You know?
Oh. So yeah, so
Bad
that's
dad joke.
right. That'd be a great one.
It'd be an interesting story. I'd love to see how that played
Right,
out.
right. At the end of this, Steve's not going to jail.
Right.
This time.
Right. So
Mike's still young.
yeah, we're gonna basically go down Steve's road. This is gonna be Steve's story on to how he went from okay to hit the bottom and then back up to the top, and living a better, healthier life.
Healthier. Yeah, healthier.
As he's drinking Pepsi. Never mind.
Jesus. Okay.
You want me to start over with the dad jokes? We can do this.
No.
we don't do
Please don't.
Two cops and a drug addict walking to a bar.
Right. We're just gonna keep
We had
going.
to come up with an answer for that one.
Two cops and a drug addict walking into a
Walking to a
bar.
bar.
Yeah. So without much further ado or interruption, Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your drumming, and we'll go from there as far as your story goes.
In terms of like jumping straight into the addict part, or just the what I'm doing now part.
Let's start with the attic. You know, let's
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
for the listeners at home, it's going to be, you know, we're going to get kind of dark, or maybe we don't know.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to be controversial. Because
Definitely.
this is something that doesn't happen. You don't tend to get, you know, it seems like we're taught to be one side of the coin or the other. You know, you got I don't want to say cops against criminals, but that's basically kind of how society views it. So
Yeah.
but this is, you know, Steve represents, like we talked about before the episode, represents a success story that you don't see that often. You know?
Right.
You know, we see too many times, especially in our line of work, where people go down the road, but they don't ever get off of it. You know, they take in.
Yeah, it winds up killing them.
Yeah, it winds up killing them. You know, like I've got, early in my career, there was a female who, you know, when I say gorgeous, it was absolutely gorgeous female,
Yep.
and 6 months later, you know, she went down the heroin road, and within 6 months, it was a, you know, complete. You know, she looked 15, 20 years older,
Right.
and just tired. You know, and you hate seeing that. You know, you can't change anything about it. So, with you, I think you bring a different perspective than a lot of people get.
Right.
A different, not approach, but a different experience. You know?
Well,
It's
a lot
more
of
of
people are raised in that life too.
Yeah.
You got to factor that in. I wasn't. I neither one of my parents were smokers. They were both athletes. To my knowledge, my dad maybe tried a cigarette when he was a teenager. My mother never did. So for me to kind of go down that road, now there was addiction in my family, and there's a genetic side to addiction. We learned this kind of stuff in rehab, and so I had a grandfather who was an alcoholic, and I've had on both sides of the family people who had drug problems, alcohol problems. So it definitely was passed down to me, but you know I don't kind of.
It wasn't laid out in front of you to see it.
No, it was nothing
Right.
like that. I remember like growing up and going like to see, you know, to a family member's house. I'm not gonna say which one, and seeing like my cousins, like doing shady stuff, and I'm just like I didn't understand it because I was so young. But
Right.
my dad was like, "Oh, it's time to go," was, you know, kind of thing. And I kind of figured out, you know, later on what that meant. but
they were about to have some sort of episode they didn't want you exposed to,
Right.
type thing.
right. So, in terms of like drug addiction, though, like I was a party animal, not so much a drug addict for years. I thought I was having like a really good time, and then one day I go to get some dental surgery done, right? And they give you prescription pain medication.
Right.
And then one day it's just like, I'm really liking this medication, and I started taking 2 or 3. Before you know it, I'm like asking people, hey, you know where I can find some more of this? Because my doctor will refill it. And before you know it, you're using needles.
Right.
You know?
And you had a fear of needles, right?
I had a fear of needle tug, yeah.
Same.
And I'm kind of like that now. If I go now, like I had to get had a bursitis flare up. Then they gave me a shot of some steroid, I don't know what it was. And it freaked me out like it did back when I was a kid. I'm like, that's weird, because there wasn't a day that would go by where I didn't want to poke myself with one, several times a day,
So how long were you using heroin? If we
Well, it was heroin was part of it. Morphine was my
okay.
my go-to. Oxycontin, morphine, Dilaudid. Those I'm sure you've seen those on the streets.
Believe it or not, that's decreased substantially.
Well, today,
At least in this area.
Yeah.
we have like a fentanyl problem today, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm so out
Yep.
of touch with how things are today.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, right.
I hear stories about so and so dying on fentanyl, and have you heard? Remember that guy you knew back? I hear it all the time. It's like, well, I don't know how it's come. I know if I've heard how it comes in, and it's like it's being made at labs at home and all that shit. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but
So your addiction didn't come from a bad life. It didn't come from
No.
a hardship. It was just a
no, I was in a very privileged family, I think.
Well, and that's what. So we had talked about it again right before the podcast. That's kind of the opioid narrative.
Right.
Is it's not guys who just grew up in it, who had a bad hand dealt to them or whatever.
Right.
It's guys who were successful. They had good careers, things like that. And in your case, it was a surgery. But in a lot of people, it might be they were in a workplace incident. They broke their foot.
Right.
Had to have surgery or whatever.
I hear it all the time about somebody
Right.
having back issues.
And they get it addicted to the pain pills.
it falls into that opioid crisis thing
Right.
that went on real heavy in the 90s, early 2000s, where they were saying that the pharmacies were prescribing and over prescribing and stuff
Right.
like that.
So it's not the person who you hate saying it, but we all did, especially when you're younger. You look over, oh, that's just a crackhead walking down the road,
Right.
Or whatever derogatory term we want to use for them. And some of it, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying hey go hug your neighborhood drug addict. I'm not
Right,
going down
right.
that road, but it's understanding that hey a lot of them didn't choose to be there.
Right.
It wasn't a.
I
wanna
understand
go
the
get-
frustration of
Right.
being around them now,
Right.
because I do work with the public and I deal with the guys that come in that were like I was, and I'm like, holy,
Right.
that was okay. I get it now, but it's like,
So I got a quick question for you, because this is something that I've kind of developed on my own through law enforcement, dealing with these individuals, is that the addiction itself is more of a disease, and once you have it, it's hard to break that. But that, like, my own opinion is the choice to do it, not once you're addicted, the initial choice, and say maybe the second or third time, that's a choice. That's a choice you made.
right, it's a choice.
But once it becomes that full-blown addiction, and you're starting to do those questionable things to carry it on,
It's
at
like
that
breathing.
point, right, at that point, you're stuck. It's a disease at that point.
I was, even as an addict, I was like, I didn't want to think I had, like, disease sounded so over-exaggerated.
Right.
I'm like, I thought disease was like cancer, things like that. I'm like, even as a recovering addict in rehab, and they're saying they're using the D word, and I'm just like, I don't see. I just don't. But I see. I get where it's how the epidemic it is, and how it is considered a disease from an outside source. Yeah,
Right.
I get it. Yeah, but when I was in it, I was just like, I didn't think. When I was going to meetings, I was like, I have this disease, and I didn't think like that. And I didn't want to think in terms of like living the rest of my life as, hi, I'm Steve, I'm this for the rest of my life. Because there's people
Right.
that go to these meetings for like years and years and years, cry every single week, and they get their chips, and It's like they're still stuck in that mindset. And
The
if it works
victim
for you, if it
mentality
works
type
for
thing?
if it works for you, then if it keeps you sober, then don't stop doing it. But I've had to find other avenues. I couldn't do it because I think if I was going to meetings like that, it would wind up.
It almost keeps like a fresh wound
Yeah,
where you're
Yeah.
ripping the Band-Aid off every single time you go to it.
yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of like that, but it's like everybody's addiction is different. Everybody with that's different. There's no two addicts are the same, and each drug out there is different of how people handle it. I mean, we have a huge meth problem around here.
Yes,
I'm
we
sure,
do.
and you guys being law enforcement, you see it way more than I do. So, and I get frustrated with it. I'm like, God, why do y'all want to stay awake that long? There's nothing to do around here that you need to be awake.
I love my bed too much, man.
Right.
Oh,
Like,
my
that's, why,
God.
that's why I can't go down the. I'm not going down any narcotics road. But
But-
if I had to choose one, meth is not the one for me.
No,
like I'm too
you-
lazy for that.
Right.
Yeah. That's not a good one.
I just want to.
I can't.
I don't want to be awake.
I
that
have,
long.
like,
I want to be clear to all the people who I work with who are listening to this. I'm not.
not going down that road.
He's
Going
not
down
ever
the
going to do
narcotics
it.
road,
That's
you
what
know.
I'm here to
Don't be doing
remind.
the
Don't
search
do
warrant
it.
at my
I've
house
done
in
it.
the morning.
Right.
But I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you,
We'll be
there
sleeping.
wasn't a drug I haven't tried. I've done crack. I've done meth. If it was made, I probably had it in my body at one point
Right.
or another.
So was
My drug of
it?
choice was opiates.
So was it just during the recreational time that you tried all these, or was it once you were on that?
No, I think
That-
like the drugs like crack and meth came along during the points when I couldn't find other things, like the things that I needed. And I thought, well, I got to have something in my system or I'm going to feel like shit. And I would go get my hands on a Xanax or anything I could find. And I would make the mistake of like, oh, I'm going to go get some speed. That'll make me feel better. And it just heightens everything and makes everything. Now you're paranoid, sick,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't sleep. I'm like, I'm never going to figure this out.
I'm the worst drug addict
And
ever.
then you try the alcohol, and it was like, it's like, oh, maybe if I get drunk, I'll feel bad. No, now you're just sick, and now your stomach, everything's messed up. I'm like, nah, it doesn't work.
Right.
So what was the hardest part for you through the entire process?
The hardest part for me,
From when you started and got hooked to you're done and you're in recovery, like through this whole process, what's the hardest part?
the hardest part was like the bullshit I put people through. Myself, that comes later. There's the battle comes like you got to deal with like if you think in terms of the 12-step program, the AA stuff and all that.
Right.
Yeah. I can't recall the order in which everything is in.
Well,
I
it's
know
been
the-
almost
I-
20
I
years,
know
so
the
I mean,
Serenity Prayer like the back of my hand. It's just it's tradition. It's whatever it is, and it works for people. But I think the shit that I put my family through was the worst part.
Right.
I didn't have a wife or kid back then, so
So okay, I have if you don't mind, it's kind of a complex question. All right.
Mhm.
You've been clean. You've been sober since 2018, or I'm sorry, 2008.
2008.
So-
I think it's when I got to rehab. So yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
so
so we're
for-
about 16, almost
yeah,
17 years.
So
Yeah.
more, almost coming up on two decades. So obviously things are different now. Like they've implemented Narcan and things like that to help
Right.
assist it. Now, one of the things that I noticed in honestly very very early in law enforcement was cops are kind of cold-hearted to addicts, and what I mean by that is when we respond to an overdose or whatever, honestly, we don't show a lot of emotion to
The empathy.
to the addict or to honestly his family, and what I mean by that is I've been there where we have done CPR or Narcan on an addict who overdosed, and they came back too. So hey, they're still living, which is good, but they would have a family member, whether it be a mom or dad, brother, uncle, whoever, come over, and and unfortunately, kids get brought up around that.
Yep.
And so the family member would start berating them, the addict, for, hey, they're doing this in front of their kids. They're doing, you're embarrassing your family. Why would you do this? And trying to bring logic to something that I don't think you can apply logic to,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Right.
So, and I guess my question would be, did you have can you offer some guidance on that for the guys that, I know we don't have answers. Everything's different, but did you have an instant where like you had that where somebody's trying to talk logic and hey, you're letting yourself down, you're letting your family down, but yet you're still just so tucked to it. Like, what's the thought process there?
Well,
does that make sense?
It does make sense, but it's like, when you're in the clutches of something like that and your body's going into seizures and everything, you're vomiting and stuff, like all the word, it's just words, and it's like
right.
you believe it, what they're saying is right. You don't want to be there yourself. You've got yourself there, but you really don't want to be there. But it's not as simple as like, I'm just going to sit in this room and you board that door shut, you board that window shut, and you don't let me escape. It doesn't work like that. Don't
right.
find a way out. I've had my parents several times lock me in a room. They've tried everything, and I mean, I think during Hurricane Katrina, I was very strung out.
Yeah.
Somehow I managed to find a way to get drugs during the storm.
That's some dedication.
That's dedication.
Yes.
Were you here for
No,
Katrina?
I was in Iraq during
like
Katrina.
It shut everything here down. Like you weren't going nowhere. There was no. I think it was like 2 weeks we had.
We had to evacuate. Right? Okay. We evacuated to some house. I don't know who it was, and I found a medicine cabinet. Oops. I'm like, what am I doing? And this is in my head. I'm sick. Like Louisiana just got destroyed. I'm looking at the news footage, and New Orleans is underwater and all this crap. You may not have
a house to go home to.
Well, we had a house. This was after the storm.
Okay.
So we weren't sure like when the power was coming back on, and the stress level was high, and I'm like, oh no, I'm really sorry. I'm in pain. I'm just agonizing pain. And I remember like going out of town and like asking people on the streets. I'm like, hey, I mean, we're going to shopping malls and stuff like that. And they got these signs like, welcome Hurricane Katrina refugees. We're up in northern Louisiana, on the Arkansas state line somewhere. I don't remember where exactly. And I was finding a way to get. I was just like, I wish I had like that go-to mentality like I had back then applied to life now, because that would be unstoppable.
Right.
I got you.
That would be unstoppable.
I got you.
Man. You know what I mean? Just
right.
like if I could apply that, like God, I was such a go-getter, and I'm like now I'm just like God, I can't get there.
the go-getter for the wrong thing.
For the wrong thing,
right?
Right.
So what would you say is? Because I know everybody's different when they have their moment to make that change. What was your driving force? What said, okay, Steve's enough is enough?
I was tired of sitting. Let's see, like 4 times in rehab. Got kicked out of the first one, kicked out of the second one.
How'd you
Homeless.
get kicked out of rehab?
You right?
Drugs came in.
Okay.
No.
Because drugs can get in rehabs. And they usually, like most rehabs, won't let anybody in the same zip code in the treatment facility. That's why they always send you to Mississippi. Or they'll send you out of state, right?
Okay.
Well, they let a local guy in that lived like 10 minutes down the street. He wound up being my roommate. And he's like, I can get you some coke. I'm just like, no, I'm already clean. I mean, the drugs are out of my system. I'm breathing. I'm physically fine. But I wasn't mentally fine yet. And the guy brought coke in, and they busted several of us. They sent us all on buses. They dropped me off to one facility, dropped these other guys off, and I left that one and somehow ended up in a homeless shelter in Mobile, Alabama. This is the 3rd time in rehab. And downtown Mobile, sleeping in some kind of homeless shelter. Really horrible place to be, by the way. Don't recommend it.
Mobile or the homeless shelter?
Right.
Mobile, I don't know which one's worse, bro.
Take that, Bama.
Yeah.
Roll that tide.
This is downtown Mobile. I'm like, how the hell am I in Mobile? I'm like lost. I'm like, how am I in Mobile? Like, I was just in Mississippi. I'm like, how close are we? Like, where? I'm like, okay. And then I'm thinking, well, what now? Right? And so there's this, I'm asking some dude on the streets. There's a drug facility up here, a treatment facility that they feed the homeless about once a week. And go talk to them. So I went and talked to them.
This is the third one, right?
Walking around with a suitcase.
Right. This is the 3rd rehab, right?
This is the 3rd. Yeah, the third, yes, third rehab.
Yeah, all right.
I'm trying to think here. I'm like, God. But yeah, downtown Mobile, and that was a 90-day program. And I wind up being like it was like a lot of the treatment facilities around here in the South are more like faith-based, which means they teach more like biblical stuff, not so
Right.
much the scientific stuff of what's going on. So they had like this band, right? And they were like, whoa. I told them I was a drummer. So they wanted me to stay and live there and just play in this band, which I said, no, I got to get back home. I get back home after my 90 days up. Now, yeah, you think I'd be good, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go out and I start partying and start drinking again, like right after. I mean, and I'm not even an alcoholic. So I start becoming an alcoholic this time. But pretty soon I'm back on the pills again.
Gotcha.
And back to hawking, like stealing jewelry and guns and just anything of value from like family members and friends and stuff like that. Shit that I would normally not do, because I was never a shoplifter, ever growing up. So for me to do that, I was just like, man. I think after it was like a couple of years after that, I wound up kind of back into a really bad situation, doing it even more than I was doing it. I don't know if you ever heard of what's the thing called trash fever, but that's if you inject something into your vein that's and it's got like a bacteria on the spoon, which a lot of heroin addicts and stuff.
Right.
Your body goes into toxic shock.
Yeah, because they don't clean anything.
Right.
We don't know. And you hit these high fevers, like, right, and you black out. A lot of people don't wake up from these things. I went through them like 15, 16 times. From like what they call trash fever.
Yeah, the rumor mill is that everyone that's known you the last, like, before '08 is baffled that you're still alive. So,
right.
So I believe everything you're telling me right now.
This is not like something like, these guys that, I grew up a musician. I grew up a musician, but I grew up like idolizing rock stars who've been through way worse than I have.
Right.
But part of me was like, man, even though I know what that guy's doing is wrong, he's still there rocking his ass off. And that's kind of like, I did like the idea of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know what I mean? And when you're a musician, I guess, who wouldn't? Right. And that's kind of what I was going for. Like a lot of my heroes were like that, and most of them didn't make it. A lot of them did, I mean, look at Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, for instance. Right. Yeah, this guy was injecting Jack Daniels into his veins when he couldn't get his fix. And now he's I don't know, 20, I don't know how many years sober this guy is, but it's like, bravo to him, Right. And he's still at it today, and he's still alive and kicking. So I think if those guys, you could use me as an example, but if those guys that had millions of dollars in their pocket were doing 10 times the amount of drugs I was doing and got through it, then,
So when you were doing the stealing from family and friends and everything else like that, while you were doing the actual stealing, were those the thoughts you were having, like, I can't believe I'm doing this, or was that an afterthought?
It was an afterthought.
Like, during it, you were just like, I gotta get...
I'm sick. After, I'm like, I feel better. I'm like, shit, how am I going to get this stuff out?
Gotcha.
I got to go to the pawn shop. I got to get this thing out before they recognize it's gone. That's the scary part. Because, and I did that like a lot. My dad's a hunter, right? So he's got guns, all over the freaking place. And I mean, in a safe. Right. He's a very responsible gun owner.
Like,
he's not one of
your grandchild.
He's not one of these gun guys that walks around with his, strapped. He's a hunter and he's a sportsman. And I'm like, I gotta get these out before deer season kicks in, or he's gonna notice.
He's gonna realize they're gone.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm like,
you're suspect
like,
number one.
Your father's the kind of guy you grow up kind of fear. Now, usually if like when you hear your parent, don't let me get your dad in here. Right. When you start stealing from somebody that says, don't let me get that man in here, that's when you know you're cooked, man. Right. Because that's the guy. That's the person that you're like, he would, But anyway, like I would sometimes get things out, and a lot of times it was like too late. The 90-day period's up at the pawn shop. It belongs to them. Cops get involved. They gotta do something. So, like, I got arrested twice. Yeah, I think twice. I got arrested,
And that's it, right? Like, you only got arrested twice, right? You don't have like some lengthy,
no, I don't know.
extensive criminal
But
history.
I think after the first time I would learn. But I'm like, no. I got arrested. The second time they put me in general population, I think they call it, short for.
Right? Yeah.
You
No.
guys know that
Yeah.
better than I do. Well, I was an A-meat. Not if if you're familiar with that place.
Very familiar with that jail.
They put me in there with I was there with like these murderers and all this. The guys that claimed to be murderers, you know. So the second time they put me in there, to really kind of set me and scare me straight. And I just remember seeing fights break out, and at the time I was so sick. I'm like, you could have shanked me, I wouldn't have cared. I wasn't scared one little bit. I was just like,
Now, this is back in like 2008, early 2000s.
Right.
They didn't have at the time the drug kind of coping stuff that they do now, right?
right.
So like if you came in as an addict back in like the early 2000s, there was no treatment or anything
Well,
like
no,
that.
there's treatment. Like for instance, when I first got bad off, and Charity Hospital in New Orleans was a place they would send addicts when they were to sick it out. They would give you medication.
When you say send addicts, like you talking about the jail would send you there?
No, this is before jail. This is when my mother tried to get me sober the first time. They said, well, send them to a detox center where they
Gotcha.
can give you medication to sleep through the pain and wake up and basically
Be out of the sickness part of it.
yeah, and then they wake you up and you start doing the meetings and whatnot. This is back before Katrina, so Charity Hospital in New Orleans was still around.
Right.
That's where I was.
So when you went into jail, they didn't have anything like that.
No jail. You're sticking it out on your own. You're
Right. So now,
So the inmates look at you like they got AIDS or something. Something's wrong with him.
right. So now
They're
when
more
when
scared of
you
me than I was them.
when you go to jail now, then they have a nurse that comes in and does an evaluation on you. And
They do?
Oh yeah. Steve, that's a good thing that you don't know that.
It's a good thing I don't. Yeah.
So when you take somebody into custody, you take them to the jail. They have a nurse now that comes out and she does a basic diagnosis of your general health, like blood pressure, stuff like that. And they ask you,
Have you taken anything you want me to
right?
detox?
Are you going to detox on anything? Are
Never
you
been
going
asked
to
that, no.
right? And so then, like, if you come out and you're like, yeah, no, I'm an active user of these narcotics, they will do detoxing medication to prevent you from having to go through those sickness and everything else. Now I'm sure the cravings, the withdrawals, it's not the same.
In this area?
Oh yeah. That's
crazy.
I can't say
I'm sure it
it's
doesn't mask everything.
right,
No.
But
right,
if I'm sure if it helps out at all.
I'm
right.
surprised they would do that.
Oh, it's extensive, but it comes from, you have guys that are much like in the 80s and the 90s where you had people that were so alcohol dependent that if you deprived them of it, that they would go into, their body goes into shock. It's the same thing with addicts, and that's something that they've learned over time, is that you get these guys that have been using, like that Nikki Sixx, who used for so long,
Right.
that you just
can't
cut
just
that
cold turkey it.
right. You
No.
can't cut that supply off. It's not like
done
nicotine.
I've kicked it like behind locked doors, and I've done several different ways of cold turkeying it. Or I would do like my mother, would say, she had anxiety medic. I'll give you one of my anxiety medications to help maybe make the pain go away. And then there were some days where my mother would be like, how much money do you need? Because I can't watch this anymore. And she would,
Right.
if you ever watch the show Intervention on A&E.
Right.
I don't know if it's still around, but
Oh yeah.
you see these parents dropping their kids off to the dealer's house all the time.
Well-
And these aren't parents. They're not supporting their kids doing it. Like their kid's sick.
They just can't
And their
imagine
instinct
watching the
as a parent
suffering.
I cannot watch my son suffer. How much do you need?
Right.
After a while, you stop asking how much. She stops asking how much you need. You got everything she has, and then you're going in her purse and pulling out of money without asking.
Right.
And that's when shit starts getting real.
So it's
You can beat that out.
no shit's okay.
Okay. Good.
So it's enabling, but it's not out
It's
of
part of the addiction process.
right.
Well,
It's
That's
because
why
they don't
put
want to see you
families-
suffer.
When you go to treatment facilities, they always have a family session.
Right.
They have
right.
several of them for a lot of people. But where they have most treatment facilities have a licensed psychiatrist or whoever's. They and they always have the parents come in, and because it's a family problem, it's not a you problem. That's how they see it. So they want to get down to the root of what's causing this. What was his life growing up? What what was your life with him growing up? They ask all kind of questions, you know. So I remember that.
So you get arrested the second time,
Right.
and you get out.
Mm-hmm.
What was the next step to getting into that rehab and everything else?
The next step. Well, this is the
Because the fourth time worked, right? Was it the fourth time?
fourth time they said, well, we're going to put you in for a year.
You did rehab for a whole year?
Yeah, I'm a little congested. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But,
You're good.
I don't want to cough in the mic and.
I can edit it out. You'll be all right.
But they put me in for a year. That's a long year, too, by the way.
That sounds right. Would you rather do a year in rehab or a year in jail?
I'd rather do a year in rehab. I mean, they take better care. I mean, rehab's you're living with a bunch of guys. It's an institution. You know, that's what rehabs are. So, damn it, I'm so congested. But like, no, it's like this. It's you got several different personalities. So when you're in there for a year, you see a lot of people come and go, and a lot of the guys in there for 90 days. Well, they'll have a program where like, well, you can do an extended stay. So I did the extended stay for a year, and I would see these guys do like their 90 days and come back a month after they're gone. They look just as 10 times worse than they did before, you know, when they completed the program. So I saw them come and go all the time, and then some didn't come back at all. I'd find out they would died, you know. But rehab's not a fun place.
Right.
It's better than jail, though.
I give you that. You probably have better beds.
Not really. Well, no, it's thicker mattresses. Yeah. I mean, jail. You're lucky if you get a mat.
Right.
Especially if you're a new guy.
So now we're looking at almost 2 decades of sobriety. What's the struggle like as far as, you know, you did your year in rehab. What's the next few, like, year, 5 years, 10 years look like as far as that struggle or the temptation to relapse?
I went through a bad depression where I isolated myself for years. I wasn't using, not even close. I mean, I was just depressed, really.
Right.
And I thought I needed to be at the time, because like a lot of guys, they get out of rehab and they start dating right away, and they fall in love, and they get their hearts broken, or vice versa, and they're back to it. And I had a few people that were like kind of coming in and out of my life, and I was like, you got to leave, you got to go. I got to be by myself, even though I needed people. Yeah, I was just like
having the right person.
Right, and it's like, I think they I had to like kind of learn to live on my own. I'm like, my parents are, look, you're not ever coming back to stay with us. We love you, we're proud of you, but you got to figure this out. So I got in a little 1-bedroom apartment, and I got really into, you know, the haunted house stuff I did when I met my wife. I used to decorate my apartment all year long and make Halloween.
I've been to your house. I 100% believe that.
Well, not the apartment. This was before.
I'm in your house now. I've been there, so I believe that your apartment was decorated like that.
So that's how I would cope, and I got back into music and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's kind of how I managed throughout the years. It was just being more creative with my time.
So you're one of few people that I know of that's made it without a single, like, relapse or like full blown back into it.
Right.
Which is uncommon. You're basically like kind of a rarity to have made it this long sober.
There was a moment like where I got in a motorcycle accident when I was working for Harley, and they had to give me a shot of something because I was in so much pain, and I vomited. I remember that. I'm like, that's how I knew my body wasn't. I couldn't do pain medication anymore.
Right.
Because I was in pain. I can't suffer. Right. And on my medical chart it says, do not give this guy opiates. But if you're gonna have to, you get hit by a car.
Right. Dude.
You do what you got to do, man. You would.
That would be so rough. That would be so rough.
So, I mean, it was a hit and run. So mentally, I'm all, what the hell just happened to me? I got my first Harley Davidson. I said, I've been riding, that was another way I coped. I'd ride Harleys.
Right.
So I got out of rehab in 2008? I started working for Harley Davidson in 2011.
At the one we worked at? You worked at that one that entire time?
No, I came back.
Oh, it's like, man, that's rough.
No. When you worked, let's see, I left and came back. So yeah, but I worked under the original ownership under Mr. Zanka.
Yeah.
You came during the Ride Now process when they bought the business.
No, I got there right before that
Oh,
happened.
you did? Okay.
Yeah, in 18. That was right before the gentleman and his wife owned it, and then
I know you're talking about. Yeah.
BR took it over.
Right.
And then that's when I left, when I had that
That was one of the
incident.
first places I went and worked after rehab.
A lot of people don't, I think they undervalue the freedom of riding a motorcycle. The mentality that, and I say this just
Brittany,
from
you need to listen to this.
I say this I say this from mostly a male perspective, but men, we have a way of thinking and a way that our thought processes work. And when you're on a motorcycle, it's crazy how your body goes second nature into operating the motorcycle, but your brain can be in a million places or nowhere.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just enjoying that ride, and it's therapeutic in a way that a lot of people don't understand.
I think that was my first accomplishment after being an addict, was getting a motorcycle.
Right.
Yeah,
Having that
just having
thing
that.
that's yours.
And I thought that, and I don't know, when I was involved in that accident, it was a hit and run. So the guy hit me and fled the scene. I guess my head got all messed up. I went to a deep depression because I had some head, I got hit in my head.
Head injury type stuff, yeah.
And I had tends to have me go through, it didn't make me use or anything like that, but I just remember being so depressed. I'm just I felt like I had no value because I was just left there on the side of the road.
Right.
Before anybody pulled over, people were driving by just looking at me. I'm like,
Bikes in the road, you're
bikes
laying on the
road,
side.
I'm like, what did I do to you?
Couldn't be bothered.
Couldn't
Right.
be bothered. By the time law enforcement is like, oh, that's Steve from Harley. They knew just who I was because we
Right.
dealt with all the
Right,
bikes.
all the bikes came in for
For
the
the,
local
law enforcement.
agencies, yeah. That's
They
actually
did.
how I got into law enforcement.
Yeah, that's that's Steve. That's yeah. They called everybody, and then I think the people from Harley called me that night, make sure I was okay. I was in the ER by the time they called my mother first. And she was so opposed to me getting a motorcycle. I remember that. My dad was all for it.
It's weird how that works.
And I remember,
Both of mine are not interested in me having a bike.
but
My
when I
brother got in a bad motorcycle wreck, and after that, they're like, "Please get rid of." I sold my bike then. I wish I wouldn't have.
I'm more scared of getting one now because of that. I mean, I'm not saying I never would again, but
Right. Well, now you have a whole different perspective on life and everything else, right?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Because you got your beautiful wife, beautiful little girl. So what's that like? 20 years ago, Steve.
Oh,
and if you'd have told 20-year-old, my brain's not working. 20 years ago, if you'd have told yourself that you'd be married and have a daughter at this point in your life, what?
So by the time I'm middle aged.
Right. What do you think that guy would have said?
Well, I know a lot of people are saying I was a late bloomer because I'm like I said, I got a 4-year-old child. Most people my age that are approaching 50, their kids
Have
are already
grandkids or
graduated.
whatever.
They have
Right.
grandkids. I know people my age have grandkids, and I got a 4-year-old. So
I will
I would
say,
have said I didn't think I would ever get married or have kids.
Right.
Honestly, I mean I don't know. When I say married, I said I would eventually end up married. I think, but I think waiting so long, like 44 years old, and you having your first
Right.
kid. I'm like I was surprised that happened.
I love watching your videos of you and your daughter. Like, you can hear the dad in your voice. Like, there's
Yeah.
we talk about it with being parents, and there's a difference in a man's voice when he goes from I'm at work or I'm dealing with a situation to I'm daddy, and that's like a whole different demeanor. And I love watching it because I didn't know, like, when I met you, you didn't have any kids yet.
No.
Like, it was just you and your
On
wife.
second thought, actually, I didn't think it was going to happen.
Right. And so it was,
Even my mother said it. She's like, you probably want to, my mom passed away in 2016, but so she'd be surprised, I think.
the way your life changed.
She did say that. No, well, she knew my life was, she got to see me get married, so that was good.
Right.
She did tell me, I remember her saying, like, y'all should try to have kids. I was like, I don't know, it's late in the game, Mom, I'm not sure, but, it happened. Like, I'm glad it did. And I have it, and now I know how to protect, I said, I know how to protect my kid. I know what the signs are when I
Right.
raise a child that my parents didn't know. I'd be like, there's things I could tell.
Do you think you would share this information with your daughter?
Like, without her asking?
When she's older, like
When
just
she's older?
letting her know kind of, hey, this is what your dad's story is. so maybe so she knows who.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, what age did they start talking to kids about? Like
elementary school, Dare, and all that
the
other
Dare
stuff.
program. I didn't graduate. I didn't go to graduation that day, so I'm blaming all on that.
Damn lion! That lion didn't make it.
No, but, I didn't get my magic button. So,
did you get the shirt at least?
I don't think I
moved
got the
schools
shirt
halfway through our Dare program.
I was going to buy my drugs wearing the Dare shirt. I found it at Goodwill.
You're lying.
You're lying. Tell me you're lying.
I'm not lying. Why would I lie about that? Find shit laying around at Goodwill.
Steve.
What?
I will say
that legit happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
one of my favorite drug arrests was a guy wearing a Dare shirt. So it's kind of funny.
It's kind of funny.
It was the only thing I had laying around. I don't know how I got it. It was probably being ironic at the time. I was like, hey, look at Goodwill. I'm a little screwed up, and there's a Dare shirt. Just my size. I mean, I'm losing all this weight from all this drugs. I could fit perfectly in a kid's shirt.
So, how do you think that you would handle it as a parent, if your child, and I'm saying child, not specifically your child.
Right.
If she were to go down that route, or I'm sorry, if your child were to go down that route, how would you handle it as a parent? Do you think you'd handle it how yours did, or do you think you would?
That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Right. And I ask you,
I think I would
where
know
a lot
the
of our
signs.
listeners are probably at is
right.
They wonder about that.
Having kids,
Yeah.
either currently going through that or they're concerned about it.
I mean, what's the average age kids start picking up drugs these days?
I'll be honest with you. That's a
young.
ballpark question. That's
Really?
a wide
I'm not
average.
gonna
I hear stories about kids like as young as 12, like
Yeah.
So I had two 16-year-olds that I arrested one time, and they were actual like selling everything. And I'm not talking about, hey, I picked up 5 pills from my dad and I'm selling it at school. I'm talking about had bags and bags and stuff where like they had been hooked up with a dealer already at age 16.
Yep. I had
I do hear stories about parents using their kids to.
Yep, I had the 11-year-old that had the guns and the weed. I had the 14-year-old down the road that, I mean, this dude was living with the drug dealer and was selling at his school. I mean, and so it's honestly most of that I think is exposure as to what they're exposed to. But
it's just normal for the kid, I'm sure.
Right, they just think that's a cool life.
Yeah.
In your situation, I specifically asked you because, like I said, when I watch your videos with you and your child interacting, there's a tone in your voice that you can tell, like, this is a loving, doting father for his child.
Well, I hate, it's a scary thing to think about, like when your kid gets to that part, because you don't want them to grow up so fast. But I feel like I know, I don't know what the answers would be. Like, I know what the signs would be, at least. I got that going for me. It's just watching the crowd that she hangs out with. My wife and I talk about it all the time. What kind of people is she like when she goes to the mall? Like, we used to go to the mall when we were kids. Like she would say like, when her friends come to pick her up, where they go, what do they do? That's why you always want to know what the company your kids keep.
Right. So, but would you be more of a
like in terms of like tough love? You mean?
Right. So when you said with your mom, it got to a point where she was just like, I can't watch you suffer like this.
Oh, yeah. It's a good question. Yeah, that's a broad. I don't know if I can answer that. Like,
so one of the other topics
I couldn't. I don't think I could. I would nip it quicker than, because she'd understand it. You have to understand, like when your parent, like when your mother's never so much as smoked a cigarette, she has no idea what you're going through.
Right, and so that's one of the things that we talk about is our fatherhood aspects. There's parts of this job that we have as a dad that nobody gave us a book. Nobody said, this is how you dad. This is how you deal with. Right. And so, we're in law enforcement. I can't honestly say that I would know what to do if either one of my children got involved in that. Like, I know what the right thing is per the law.
Yeah.
But as daddy, I don't know. I don't know what I would do with that. That's a scary
I mean, I'm sure
thought.
there's guys in law enforcement that have kids themselves that get mixed up
Oh
in that
yeah,
world.
oh yeah. We are not
as
exempt.
Cops, they're like, what? I mean, you can't like that. Doesn't change the chemistry.
So some kids actually, because their parents are cops, go further down that line.
Yeah.
As a
And
as a
use that.
rebellious streak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Almost like I'm untouchable because
right.
my daddy's so and so.
I've seen that in
right?
several films, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
So in your path of prior to recovery, so during your addiction, you met a lot of interesting characters.
Oh yeah, tons.
How many of those people do you think are, or do you know are still around? And I'm not talking about somebody that you once or twice maybe smoked a joint with. I'm talking about guys that
the
you
guys
knew.
that smoked a joint with, they're okay. But like I'm talking about the junkies and
The guys that were heavy, bad off, kind of like you were. How many of those guys are still around?
I have a buddy of mine that lives. He moved up north. He's doing construction. Runs his own business, or he's doing plumbing business right now. He's doing really well. He's somebody I wouldn't mind. I think he drinks a little bit. He's not what you call it, like sober kind of guy. But he's like he's kind of like a recreational beer drinker kind of cat. You know what I mean?
Right.
He waited. But he does. He honestly in my eyes, he's a success story. Not many others though. A lot. I found out years later, a lot of them have died. Oh, I haven't heard from them. And they're like, "What happened to so and so?" Oh, you didn't hear? And when they tell you, you're not surprised.
Right, because that's just
like,
that
every
lifestyle.
time you see them, and, there was some people like during my recovery that I would go. You living in Hammond, you'd run into people all the time.
Right, it was a small town.
And you'd see them, and it's like they just look like terrible. And it's just like, yeah. But you don't want to, you don't want to be mean and like just ignore them. You're just like, nice to see you. Just kind of go about your day. Because a lot in the drug community, a lot of people talk, Steve's sober or so and so sober, and they'll respect that enough. And like this one person, I had to tell them like, look, you see me, you keep walking. If I there's certain people if they know what to do.
So in that circle, there's actually like almost like an honor among thieves type mentality of like hey, he's off of it, leave him be.
Yeah.
He's out of that lifestyle.
Yeah, no one was calling me up. Hey man, I heard you got out of rehab. No one did that. I don't think. If anybody did that it was me to myself.
Right. Did anybody ever try to talk you out of it after your rehabs, after you get sober? Did you go to some old sources or something like that and them go, man, Steve, you're clean. You don't want to do this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's several people.
That were in the circle or?
No, in the circle. Yeah, I'm not naming names, but yeah, there were people that have gotten off of it that found out or I told them.
So inside the circle, anybody that was using at the same time in the circle, not anybody that's recovered, but anybody that was still actively using, they never tried to talk you out of it or was it kind of like a misery loves company thing?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what advice would you give somebody who is in the middle of it right now that you think maybe had you gotten that advice, you would have gotten sober sooner?
Well, that's a tough one.
Right, because
in the middle of it right now. There's no words for that. I mean, they're gonna know when they've had enough. That's all there is to it. You got to know when you've had enough. No amount of words I say to them is going to change anything.
So it has to be a self-choice.
It would have that recovery is a self-choice. It's that you can go to 18, 20 different rehabs. You can go to jail 20 to 30 times. I don't care how many times you go. There's a moment where you know you have enough, and it has nothing to do with the treatment facility or the officer that arrested you or the jail that you were in or the words your parents said to you. You just know that you've had enough of this crap. And that's what it is. It's just like I can't explain the thought of it. You have to reach that. It's like I would recommend people go seek treatment, and that if someone offers help, take it. I don't think But you really got to want it. And I don't know how to explain that kind of want.
Do you think that if you hadn't gone to a 1-year inpatient treatment center?
I think the 1 year did it for me. Because I think I'm a very a socially awkward guy. So to live with people, that amount of people, in a small building and for that amount of time, that helped do it for me.
Kind of
Right.
change
It's like,
I don't want to be in this bubble.
I really don't want to be in this on this top bunk anymore. I don't, next to this, and there are all these people coming in, and they're they're going to try to steal from you just because you're in rehab doesn't mean you're safe.
Right.
And drugs get in rehab just as easy as they get into jails now. I was one rehab, the last one I did the year, I ended up being in charge of the addicts for a while. I think the last 6 months of it. So I had to issue the piss test for them, search their bags. If they had any medication, I had to monitor their medication because some people have bipolar, schizophrenia, all these different, medications they have to take.
Right.
And I was in charge of making sure they took their medicine on time. So they trusted me enough with that. And
as an addict, that's some serious trust to be trusted with
I
medication.
I had to parole the building at night. I remember that. And if law enforcement ever had to get involved, I was the one that called them, talked to the cops. Yeah, this guy managed to get drugs in here and got 3 or 4 of my guys. They're all passed out on Xanax. That happened right before the day I got out. After my year was up, my roommate comes in and he's tripping all over stuff. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And I'm just like, what'd you do, bro? I took a Xan bar, man. I'm like, all right. Get on the phone. I had to get the guy out of there because he walked to a pharmacy and got his prescription filled, or refilled, or whatever he did. And not supposed to have those kind of drugs in rehab. And he went on his own because after a while, they wanted to take the treatment facility and turn it into a halfway house, which means you can go out and get a job. Mm-hmm. You just come back. You can have a car. Well, some of these guys weren't ready.
Right. You can't rush that.
And they went out. The number one thing I remember hearing in rehab is, I got kids, I got a job, I got bills to pay. I'm like, were you paying your bills before? No. All your money went to drugs. I hear it all the time. I got to get back to work. I'm like, I said, I talked to your wife. She said, like, you haven't been home in months, or, I would hear all this stuff that he's not paying nothing now. She's paying all the bills. She's having to get a job to pay the bills because, his money's going towards his addiction. So trying to get these people to
hit
understand
reality
that they're not ready to go back to work yet.
So do you think that they try to rush the rehabilitation in that aspect, as far as like to try to get you over your addiction so they can push you back into society? And
I think that's more the addict, like just trying to get back into society,
trying to get back home.
You get really homesick in
rehab.
rehab.
You were in Mobile, Alabama for 90 days.
Homeless in Mobile for a few days there, and then in a treatment, like in I don't know, a shelter. I don't even know what the name of the shelter was, but
that's gonna be our first hate email.
I'm like,
right.
There's gonna be somebody in Mobile, Alabama. Hey, like, screw you, man.
It ain't that bad. Come on back. Bring your Dare shirt.
You can have it.
You still have it?
No, I don't have it. I don't know what happened to all that crap.
So what do you do now, Steve?
What do I do now?
And obviously you're not in the addiction world.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. You're
not in the pawn business.
No,
right.
I got out of the pawn business. If I go to pawn shops now, it's usually to buy drum equipment.
Right.
That's right.
It's like now I'm actually spending money. I'm not.
And I've got to kind of commend you on that a little bit, because I think musicians are, like, musical talent is something that I don't think you can manufacture that.
No.
And I'm saying that from the standpoint of I've got a younger brother who I don't know how at this point in his life he hasn't built his own instrument.
Right.
Because he could touch, whether it be a guitar, a trumpet, whatever, and within a matter of a couple months he's got it, and he's just playing it at a proficient level, and
this is your brother, you said?
A younger brother.
Brother?
Does phenomenal with it. Like, he's got a good ear for music and all this other stuff. I, on the other hand,
has a bucket and he can't carry a tune in it.
I hear
like
you.
it's not one, I can't sing. I've got the rhythm of like a light pole in a hurricane. It's just there.
Looks worse than an inflatable flailing arm man.
Right. So it's definitely not something that I think I can alter. I think it's either you got it or you don't. And I watch a couple of your drumming videos and I find them pretty interesting.
Well, the music part, like as I said before, both my parents were like athletic. So my dad was a baseball coach. My mother was in track. And
did you play sports?
I tried. I was the worst, and I embarrassed the shit out of my dad.
Okay, so
being the coach,
same thing with sports as music.
You throw your son out in left field, he don't catch he can't catch a fly ball. It's just like, and I was like, I knew that wasn't my calling, and for some reason, like music was like I kind of gravitated towards it.
Right.
So, and that was something I kind of naturally. I mean, you're not natural. Like you had to learn as you go, and I'm still learning as I go. I mean, there's people way more better than me at it, but
I don't know, because if you compare me to your drumming videos, you sir could be on like MTV, VH1.
Well, you give me a stick and I can beat on some stuff.
Right, like I'll tap this, but that's all I got.
No, that was just something I think I picked up. I started playing bass in high school. Well, in my first band, I played a bass guitar. And we had a drummer. He quit. I'm like, well, I'll go play the drums. And my singer, my friend, he passed away in 1995. My first band. He was in a bad boating accident. But my first band, I said, yeah, I'll play the drums. He kind of laughs. He's like, wait, you're a bass player. I'm like, I'm whatever, dude. So I go borrow a drum set from somebody, and I just start playing the songs. I'm like, yeah, I got it, kind of. But I kind of
it's working out.
Yeah, I just had. It's just something I clicked with.
Right.
No pun intended. But it was a drummer joke.
It took a second, but I got it. I got
it now.
Not hip to the drummer jokes.
It's kind of like my dad jokes. They just don't land.
No.
But
terrible.
Yeah, there was a long period of my life where I wasn't playing music at all. I got back into music. Right after I was born.
Right. And that's kind of like...
I had a drum set, but when my daughter was born, the band room became her bedroom.
Right.
So all the drums went up. I had my equipment. And I bought an electronic drum kit that I could fold up, and that's when I started playing. That's the videos y'all see now. Is the electronic drum set, because I could just kind of fold it up. And you guys have been in my house. You see how cramped that section.
Right.
There's the podcast area, and there's the drum set. There's the bed behind us.
Now you guys are actually starting to look for a house and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So we're
in the process of getting our finances in order to get a house. Yeah.
Right, doing the whole credit building and all that stuff, just so that you're right in the right spot. No, that makes total sense. But that's almost like
I can't believe. I mean, as being an ex-drug addict, saying I'm at a good financial state. I'm doing fairly well. I mean,
right.
I'm not. No one's calling me, asking me where their money's at, and I'm caught up on my bills. So.
You're not calling people to borrow money to go get some. Right.
No, I'm months ahead on my bills, so I'm like, I think we're in a good space. Can always make more money, but it is what it is.
Right. So reality of it is you're coming up on 20 years of sobriety.
Right.
You're married. You have a child. You and your wife both have a vehicle. Looking at purchasing a home. You're months ahead on your bills. So really at the end of it, if anything, there's a light at the end of that tunnel.
There can be for people that. I'm not saying if I could do anyone that's so I hate saying that, but it's true. I mean, when addicts don't always make it.
Right. Right.
Most of the times they don't.
What do you think the craziest story of during that time?
He didn't even let you.
He didn't knew where I was going with that. What do you think the craziest story is that one you can socially tell? But
oh God,
I feel like you're in a Rolodex in your head of different moments. And you're like cycling
ask
through.
Your neighbor.
No.
Half of our listeners have no idea what a Rolodex is.
I know.
I just want to throw that out there, like, way to show your age.
So back to help those viewers out. when you go into your phone and you go to contacts and you scroll up, same thing as a Rolodex, but people back in the day used to write down names, phone numbers, addresses. It was on a circle, and you spun the outside of it to get like alphabetically to the next person.
But I had several Rolodexes, so I don't know how many stories.
Right. Like, I only know what a Rolodex is because my grandpa had one, and he used to get so mad because I would go in and randomly take names out of alphabetical order and misdo them just to piss him off.
Something that was funny but tragic but still funny, and I'm just like,
that's my life. It's
yeah. That's I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Because
a lot of crap I don't
second
remember.
Episode. Right.
Maybe you have to have a part 2.
I'm not against anything at this point.
Right.
Well, speaking of that, I'll say we bon voyage.
We can go and wrap it up. I do want to say thank you to Steve for coming out here. One on this episode, obviously, it's not something that we have a lot of light that we can shed on it.
Right.
It's you bring a different aspect than what we have. That being said, you were one of the first people that we talked to about the podcast.
Right.
And,
coming up with the idea of one,
and when I say, just without hesitation, hey, I've got this, and donated equipment and let us use some stuff, offer some tips, tricks, things like that. Come over, laughed at us the first time because of how bad the echoes were and everything. But offered some of your advice and at no point throughout the entire experience was it, hey guys, I think y'all are stupid. So I really do appreciate that.
No problem.
You've been very supportive to us. So
I mean, John mentioned doing an episode early on about
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say the first time we met, the three of us together, when we left, it was like, no, I think this would be a great episode to get together, because a lot of people don't have this type of experience. They take because it's not part of their life, they look very harshly at people who are struggling. And honestly, at the end of the day, everybody's got an addiction in one form or another, whether it's narcotics, whether it's
food,
food.
Everybody's
look.
addicted.
I'm a cheeseburger lover.
Right.
Everybody's addicted to something.
Everybody's addicted to something, and just because that struggle is not your struggle doesn't mean you get to look down on it. You may not. In the same way you don't let everything in, but you still don't have to be a jerk to people like that. So. Unless you got something else, in the same way that the Australian guy goes to the bathroom, it's toodaloo.
Right on.
I don't think that's how that goes. How does an Australian go into the bathroom correlate to toodaloo?
They go to-da-loo.